Okay, guys, Kody Brown of Sisterwives speaks out on this random podcast I found. Let's go ahead and listen in. All right, guys, here we go. The podcast is called Reality Life with Kate Casey. And this is from a while ago when Kody was actually moving to Arizona with his wives, but I had never heard it before. And I found it really interesting to hear what Kody has to say about meeting each of his wives.
His wives have jobs, they live in normal neighborhoods, and the show was their way of showing the rest of the world that not everybody in polygamy lives in a compound. So, Kody Brown.
So supposedly, Kate starts out with telling us that the reason Kody wanted to do this interview with her and his whole driving force behind him putting his family out on reality TV is because he wants to show the world that they are different from the conservative FLDS church members out there. They're different from the Warren Jeffs CULT. And they wanted to make that clear out in the reality world.
And his wives, he's got 4 wives, Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin. They have had the show on TLC for almost 10, this is the 9th season. And they have 18 children. So when they began the series, they lived in Utah, but they have since moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, where they lived in a cul-de-sac.
Okay, first and foremost, she's going to talk a little bit about the homes that the Browns had in the Las Vegas cul-de-sac. When they first moved in there, I was thinking to myself, how can they possibly afford this? But I did some research into how many of these polygamous families afford these large homes, and I'm going to talk about it later.
By the way, imagine the real estate deal on that one. They lived in this adorable little cul-de-sac, but they have decided this season that they're going to move to Arizona. So I have been following this journey of getting all these people to Arizona. So I wanted to talk to him about why they made that decision, but also how was the show even created? How did they get everybody to agree to be on the show? Most importantly, where is Tony? I haven't seen him since the taco wedding.
So she's talking about Tony, McKelty's fiance at this point. I think they had just gotten married, so her husband. And if you don't know who Kate Casey is, she covers a lot of reality TV shows, and she gets interviews with many people who are on reality television. So I was really surprised to see that Kody Brown did this interview with her, but good for us, because now we get to listen to it. She's going to talk to him a little bit about how and why they got on the show, and I found it so interesting.
So if you have watched Sisterwives, you're going to love to listen to him. I have to tell you, Brown from Sisterwives, I am so excited to talk to you. I've been watching the show since season 1. Hard to believe the show has been on. This would be its 10th year. Welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, that was its 10th year back when they moved to Arizona. And this is their 17th season this year. So they've been around for a while, and they've kind of become, their families have become a part of our lives, right? And that's why I'm still so interested in it, and I'm commenting on them, just like I was interested in the Duggars. So let's hear what Kody has to say.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long time.
Tell me a little bit about how this show came to fruition. How did TLC find you?
Well, to be honest with you, I think we found them. And about 2007, Christine was involved, my wife Christine was involved in a group of polygamists, basically, who were going, wait a second, we're just not getting a fair shake. And so they developed this coalition. They were from different sects or religions of polygamy. Some of them were independents, is what we call them. And there was this constant thing where they were trying to educate the public, constantly writing.
Isn't that interesting? It's like Kody is admitting that Christine Brown was almost the driving force in getting them into reality television. She was at work with a bunch of other groups of polygamists who were trying to become more mainstream and to let a mainstream audience know that their religion and the way their lifestyle, the culture that they live in, is not the same as what happens with the FLDS. She wanted to get out there that her polygamous lifestyle should be accepted. It's more forward thinking than what you believe it to be. And she wanted to get this out onto reality television.
To educate the public, constantly writing books, trying to educate they were from different sects or religions of polygamy. Some of them were independents, is what we call them. And there was this constant thing where they were trying to educate the public, constantly writing books, trying to educate the public that not everybody was some kind of extreme misogynistic culture of abuse and oppression. We felt like we were like really free people and that we had a really sort of a normal family, even though the dynamic was different. Because, we see other Christians or other people who are religious, and we can relate.
I mean, I think when you compare Kody Brown's family to what we actually see in the FLDS, yes, they are very different. And there is more of a forward-thinking mentality that comes along with the way that Kody's choosing to live. There's freedom for the women to do what they want to do. There's some power held by the women when you compare it to what goes on in the FLDS. And I think that that's true in many ways.
Like to them, they're just like us. We just have this one family dynamic that's different, and that's the polygamy dynamic. And we will never get a fair shake until somebody is looking into our home constantly. Like we have to be so transparent, so open. And what had happened is there was our producer had a dinner party with a group of highly intellectual.
So Kody, who's working in advertising at the time, is involved with all of these producers and advertisers, and he's kind of pitching this idea about what Christine and her friends in this group were thinking of. But the producer's like, oh, okay, we could do like a documentary about your family. And apparently Kody was like, we need to have an ongoing show that shows us on a regular basis. And he claims that the reason he wanted that was because he felt like it was the only way to do justice to really showing what his family was like.
And very liberal individuals in Salt Lake. And they were very critical. These friends of his were very critical of Mormons and of fundamentalist Mormons, all this polygamy thing. And he got kind of a burr under his saddle and decided he was going to do a documentary. And so he went to a very public polygamous woman named Ann Wild and met her and said, hey, Ann, can you put me in touch with the polygamous family? And in some senses, we've been talking about doing possibly a reality show, and how do you do that? How do you get into that? And he had been looking for somebody, and we had been looking for some kind of producer, but we didn't know what we would do. The main discussion that him and I had, or our family and him had, was he wanted to produce a festival, a 90-minute documentary festival style, take it to some kind of film festival and present it.
So this producer was going to take this video of Kody and his family and take it to a film festival. And Kody was like, no, we're too good for that. We need a TLC contract over here. He really played his cards right and got them into a situation where they've made buku amounts of money from that show.
And get people to open their minds. And I said, there is no way we are doing a one-off no matter what. If we can't have a series so that people see this normal, so that they can judge us from seeing something that was like daily, then I'm not going to do it. And so he agreed that he would do what he could to promote an entire series.
Wow, they were so lucky. When you think about all the polygamous families this could have happened to, and there were many other families who were higher up on the totem pole than Kody's family. I really do think that Kody's connections and his push to make this happen that is what caused them to be able to have this show. And it completely changed their lives. Some people might say there were a lot of negatives to it, which I understand that, yes, there were, especially being outed as being polygamous and eventually having to leave Utah. But the money that they brought in from this show, they never would have been able to live the way that they've lived without Sisterwives being a #1 hit on TLC.
Supporting Robin. How did you make the decision to become a polygamist yourself? And then how did you meet each wife?
Okay, so you cannot separate Mormonism and polygamy, no matter how much Mormons are embarrassed by it now.
So again, it's really important to Kody to try to separate himself from the FLDS. But he also wants to make everyone aware that Mormonism, it started with the concept of polygamy, that he feels like he's just carrying on what was always a part of the religion and should still be a part of the religion according to his beliefs.
Did it was a crazy thing. And so as I grew up with a history of this Mormon culture, when I'm 14, my mom and dad had been coming to a point where they were like, this is something that we're going to be doing. And my mom sat me down and explained to me the value of it. And
this is interesting. This is when Kody starts to talk about how his family first got involved in polygamy. And I am going to be sharing one of the most interesting audio tidbits I have from a podcast in my next video. And it's an interview with Kody's nephew, this guy named Benjamin Brown. And in the interview, he talks about like the little community he lived in with Kody and the family and how it operated. It's quite interesting. It's really the community that Kody's parents helped set up. The environment that they raised their children in, I mean, I would compare it to some of what you see in the FLDS. So it's very interesting to learn about. And let's just listen to what Kody has to say about it.
Essentially what you would call bearing a witness of her belief. She shared this belief with me, and I went, wow, that conviction rang very true to me. And at 14 years old, I thought, okay, this is something that I'm probably going to do. My parents, in the realization of that, joined a sect of Mormonism that endorsed polygamy. After I turned 21, I joined that church, and Mary and I met. We courted, and we got married, and we decided we were going to live plural marriage.
Mary's family was another family who were founders of this community that Kody's family kind of moved into and helped create.
Janelle was a friend of Mary's, a friend of the family's. And we met that way. Ironically, as adults, one thing led to another, and Janelle's mother, who was very opposed to polygamy, wanted to kind of rescue her from it, but she was.
So this is really important to Kody. He's got to let all of us know that Janelle, she was, I believe, LDS. She was not interested in polygamy. She ends up becoming interested in it and getting engaged to Kody and wanting to join the family and getting married. And Janelle's mother was like, oh my God, no, my daughter, this is horrible. I have to come get her. And Kody wants us to all know that Janelle's mother was so taken aback by the community, the family system, and the men there that she ended up marrying into a polygamous family.
I'm going to be very subtle because Janelle was an adult, 23-year-old adult, 23 years old. And so her mother was going to help. Well, let's look at this together. It's sort of like, and Janelle's mom met my dad. They fell in love. Janelle's mother joined our church. Janelle's mother married my dad. And Janelle and I had been friends this whole time. Janelle and I were talking to.
I'm sure you guys already know this, but for those of you who didn't, you heard that right. Janelle's mother ended up marrying Kody's dad. So it's kind of like Janelle and Kody were brother and sister, but they were adults at the time. But that's how these polygamous families get so intertwined, and it becomes really crazy.
To each other, like, we were always giving each other that look, sort of like, maybe we're supposed to do this. I don't know how to explain it. There was a spark between me and Janelle, but it was very subtle. We never indulged it until her mother, when Janelle was going to investigate our faith, our religion, and lifestyle. Her mother tried to rescue her from it and ended up joining us.
No way.
I mean, but don't get any funny ideas. It's not as cult-like as you would think. I think her and my dad just had a spark. They fell in love, and it worked, and she was a good fit in my dad's family.
Did that complicate anything within the family? In-laws are difficult. Almost anybody can kind of deal with like the complexities of in-laws. But like you have all these family connections between Mary and Janelle and then yourself. Like, does that put pressure on your marriages too?
I think it did a little bit back then. It doesn't at all now. So you kind of come into your own, and plural marriage is a funny thing,
of course it complicates things. Not only because the relationships intersect so much, but also because there are people in this story that Kody isn't talking about who have tried to leave the family, who've tried to leave the community. and the way that they've been treated after they've left, and the fact that they still want to be in contact with their mother at least, or one of their children, or whatever it might be, and that the community will very much close down to them. And when you have all these intertwining relationships going on, that can make it even more difficult for someone to feel like they can leave, or they're free to go if they need to, or they're free to make different decisions when everything about them, their whole support system is completely intertwined within a group of like 5 or 6 families, because they're all intermarrying.
Your courtships aren't really normal. They're designed around sort of a puritanical ideal, if you will. And so you really don't, honestly, I don't feel like you get to know a person well, because you just, there's certain factors that sort of keep it, in a sense, in many ways, a little bit of an arm's length relationship. And we didn't know how to do it very well. And so Janelle and I didn't have any privacy in our courtship. Mary was always around, and we didn't know really any better. So, as we grew older, a lot of those things changed. But, marriage and plural marriage can be extremely complicated, no matter how you turn it. So, it's just it was just part of our lives.
How did you meet Chris?
I mean, I just have to wonder, didn't Kody have any elders within that community system that would have given him better advice about how to incorporate the 2nd and 3rd and 4th wives into his family? It seems like Kody's almost just kind of running with this idea of plural marriage and not really having any good guidance onto how to make it work. I mean, I think in the show, they really make us feel like there are so many families in their community that are making it work and having wonderful lives, yet I've really have not seen that be the case, because we know that there are relationships that Kody's dad had that, he had relationships with, Kody's dad had relationships with women where they got divorced. I really feel like we've seen so many of the relationships that they've introduced or are around them on the show. Sometimes they are falling apart. So it's interesting to me that Kody really wanted to get on reality TV, and I thought at first the purpose of all of it was to show to everyone that polygamy can work and it can be amazing. And in the beginning, I was thinking to myself, I could do something like this. I'd love to have a sister wife who helps me cook and clean. And, I could share my husband if I had to. And yet we've watched these relationships unfold, explode, come to an end. And they really have not done a good job of sharing polygamy with the world, if that was their goal for the show.
Dean.
This is how he's met Christine.
So, Christine was, she was like royalty in our church.
See, this is what I have brought up in several of my videos before this. I am making the argument that the reason Kody and Christine wound up together is because Christine was kind of like a prize given to Kody by the church. And here Kody says, Christine was like royalty in our church.
A couple of relatives of her had been in our church leadership. Well, not a couple, almost all of her, a lot of her family was in our church leadership. We were introduced by her sister, who had been on sort of a pioneer trek. We called these pioneer treks, where we go and live out in the dirt for 3 days and trail around and talk about religious things and talk about how our ancestors endured many things. We were in a group with Christine's sister, and we had a really positive experience with her, and she wanted to introduce her sister to us. I knew both Christine and Janelle about 3 years before we ever married.
And then how did you meet Robin?
It's more fair to let them tell these stories, but I'll tell it from my perspective. Her cousin was a neighbor of ours when we lived in the house in Lehi, Utah.
So this is about how Kody met Robin. And, I think a lot of people have heard this story before, but it has to do with, again, family connections. Robin had divorced her husband and was living with a cousin. And then Kody lives next door to them, and they meet through a family. And again, Robin came from what was considered a family who was in really good graces in the church. So it was another kind of gift to Kody in many ways.
And we were always, kind of chummy, visiting and stuff like this. And one day I just drove up, and her and her cousin and her cousin-in-law and their family were all visiting out on their lawn, and we were just driving by. So we just pulled up and started chatting them up because they were in our church. They were familiar to us. They were our friends and our neighbors. And we started chatting with them, and we met Robin. And as we drove away, Mary's like, I think that, I think there's something unique about her. How do you say this? She said, I think you should.
Some people have argued that Mary was kind of set up to groom women to be with Kody, which is interesting. And I can't wait to learn. I'm doing some deep dives into this polygamous subculture. I really want to know more about how the women are trained to bring other women into the family.
Mary basically said, I think you should be interested in her.
Wow.
And one thing led to another. And, we had Robin and I later on, she was at a dance. I had a spark. She was, blocking me, and one thing led to another. And a year later we were married.
So what is the structure of the church that you are a part of? Do you consider?
Still is led by Warren Jeffs, and it's the fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So here, Kody will just go on and on. You can check out the podcast yourself if you want to hear about it, but he just wants to very much distinguish himself from the FLDS with Warren Jeffs, and also distinguish himself from the LDS, which is the mainstream Mormon church that most of us are familiar with. He wants to make sure to kind of separate himself out from those. And he spends a lot of time talking about that. He basically says that the structure of his own church, which he has like gatherings within his home and at a community center, he talks about how the structure of his own church is very similar to what they do in the LDS. And he is like one of the leaders, one of the people who stands up and leads quote unquote sermons within their church gatherings.
I get my own 5 kids' names mixed up all the time.
Okay, so now they're talking about how they're moving to Arizona. What is the goal behind all of that? And of course, she has to quiz Kody on the names of his children.
I don't know how you don't mess them up. So tell everybody the names of your kids.
So from top to bottom, we have Logan, then Aspen, then Mariah, then Madison, then McKelty, then Hunter, then after Hunter we have Garrison, Hayden, Dayton, then we have Gabriel, Gwendolyn, and Aurora, then we have Isabel, then we have Leanna, then we have Savannah, then we have Truly, after Truly is Solomon, and then Ariella is the smallest. And if I didn't say 18 names, then I think I missed a child.
Every time there's a baby born into your family, I see this sort of pang.
I've been having kids for 25 years, and I looked forward to being a dad for 10 years before that.
The thing about this with Kody, I think most of you will agree with me, is Kody looks forward to the parts of being a dad that he most enjoys. The easiest parts and the most enjoyable parts for him. I've yet to see him step up or be there in a situation when it was really hard or it was something that he didn't want to do. He clearly likes being with the younger kids. He clearly doesn't want to get involved if there's like a medical concern or just little odds and ends that you have to do for your children, fill out forms, help them get into college, spend money. He definitely doesn't want to spend money on them. That's been a huge issue on the show, where he's constantly asking how much everything costs, which he has to. He has so many kids. I understand that, and I don't think it's every parent is different, and people invest different amounts of money and emotional investment into their children. I'm not saying that he needs to invest more money, but I do think that it's funny for him to be like, I always wanted to be a dad. For 10 years before I was a dad, I wanted to be a dad. So from the time you were like 8, you wanted to be a dad. Seems a little off to me, a little sus. So many things about Kody and this family do not make sense to me. And I spend a lot of time at night, just thinking about it and coming up with, I have so many alternate scenarios in my brain of what could be going on with this family. But, I can't confirm or deny the things that I come up with. So I'm not going to talk about them here in this video, but there's just a lot of things that I have to question.
So there's this kind of a normalcy bias with it. It's like I've been in this expected place, and this has got to be foreign to so many people, especially men. It's like I'm sitting there going, I never thought that there would be a limit. I never looked at it as like, when am I going to stop? I never thought that over. And the last two pregnancies of Solomon and Ariella were a little bit of a challenge, I guess you could say. And then raising them at our age. So where this comes from is Robin hasn't had a good sleep in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. That is a huge issue. I mean, how old am I? I'm 30. I just turned 39 years old. And I'm already so tired when my kids need me. I think, oh, I would have been such a good mom at like age 17 when I had a ton of energy, but I'm running low on energy now. So I can only imagine for Kody and for some of the other moms to still have such young children. I mean, that's a lot of work for them, a lot of physical load for their bodies, a lot of emotional load for their minds. So that's something to think about when you're going into your 30s and 40s and still having children, much like we saw with the Duggar family.
So, it's just one of those things where when you're very, very nurturing, your kids all draw from you and you get tired. And so it's just a matter of where you think your capacity is to continue giving to all this. And it's a funny thing. You still are sort of needed to nurture your children even when they're older. You never really.
Isn't that funny? That is actually applies so much to season 17, right, guys? Because now we have Kody in season 17 telling his kids to get the heck out of the house. Children that he has with Janelle, who he rarely sees. He does not seem to have a strong relationship with Janelle. That's my opinion. He doesn't go over there. He's not spending time with her. And yet he wants her to kick her kids out. Here he is on this podcast saying, even as my kids get older, they're going to need me. But from what I'm seeing on season 17, he wants all those older kids out of there. And he wants to only focus on the immediate family that he has around him right now. And that's primarily Robin and her children.
That mode of being a parent. And, so the kids will, the older children are off doing their lives and stuff like that. But every once in a while they come back needing something, needing some advice, needing some nurturing, needing some love even. And so there's this demand that at the age that I'm at now has sort of set me on my heels, and I'm going, I'm getting tired. I'm getting older.
Yeah, he is tired. That makes so much sense. Kody is tired. He doesn't want to keep raising these kids. Once they hit 17, 18, it's like he's done with them. And that's the feeling I'm really getting about Christine's kids. Like Isabel, they just fell in this time frame where he was just like, I don't have time for this. I don't have the energy for it. I've got a couple little kids over here with Robin. It's easier to just focus on these like few little kids than it is to, how am I supposed to separate all my time, my money, my emotional fortitude between 18 different children? It's really hard. And that is yet another reason why polygamy can cause so much pain. And, it's an unfortunate place for a lot of kids to be raised in. And I think you can see that if you go to Instagram or TikTok and you look up the keyword pliglets. It's all these children of polygamous homes that are getting on social media and talking about their experiences. And a lot of them have many things to say that are hard to hear, that it was difficult to grow up in this environment. We all have things that are hard about our upbringing and things that are positive. But I think when you grow up in this kind of a family structure, there's no denying that many children are going to get lost when you have so many children. And there's a lot of dependency on like how much the wife is favored in the family, how much attention those children will get. I think that can be devastating for kids.
I'm wondering what it would be like to be an empty nester, and yet I'm 16 years away from that. I'm right at that midlife crisis place. I'm 52, and I'm going, could I have one more? Should I have one more?
So you have 18 children, 4 wives, you have all these properties.
That's sad. It's like Kody doesn't really take seriously fatherhood or what he's been doing to these kids by just having child after child after child. I mean, honestly, a lot of them seem like really good kids. And I think out of what could have happened in this polygamous family, I mean, most of the time we saw really good interactions between the moms and their kids and the kids and each other. A lot of good things came out of the Brown family, in my opinion. But I still feel for the kids. I especially feel for the kids who are kind of at that crossroads now. Most of them are like in that 18-year-old, to 25-year-old age range, when so many things are changing for you and you still could really use some support from your family. And, Kody is just at a place where he's like, I'm not able to give any of that. I've got younger kids here.
An awesome financial responsibility. I know that you guys operate, as a team. How are you able to kind of navigate that huge financial responsibility? When we met you in 2010, you were still in advertising. Is the show...
Yeah.
Are you able to have jobs outside?
We know he's not in advertising anymore. For those of you who aren't aware, Kody actually he goes to like local flea markets and stuff and does gun sales. So he's moved out of advertising since they relocated to Arizona.
Of the show, like how does it all kind of come together?
Yes, okay. So we had basically always steadily had what was it? Janelle and I usually had a tendency to work full time. Of course, I was career. Janelle was also career, even though we had adjustments in that. And then Mary and Christine would kind of fill in at home with part-time jobs, on and off. So it took efforts from basically all of us to manage the family. When we got chased out of Utah with their...
So you had to have all 4 adults working in order to financially support all of those kids.
Legal system and their threat of prosecution, we had to adjust. So we ended up living off of investment. Basically, we cashed in our investments. And we muddled through until we actually developed some entrepreneurial ventures. And we've had both entrepreneurial success.
Okay, so they cashed in their investments. From what I've read, they had a small amount of money. They had some savings in retirement that they were able to take out. Most of this was in Kody and Mary's name. They took it out in order to try to move to Arizona and in order to try to move to Las Vegas and start another life there. But they were really financially hurting. They did have the money coming in from the show, and that was their main moneymaker. But then, of course, Robin and maybe some of the other sister wives got in their head that they could be entrepreneurs and start these other businesses. And Robin really wanted it to be a jewelry business. If we all watched in the beginning when they were in Las Vegas, they were trying to decide what kind of business they wanted to do. And I know that like Christine had other ideas, so did Mary. Mary had different ideas, but Robin really wanted the jewelry thing. And because she was kind of like very devoted to it, and she did seem to organize better than the other wives, they decided to all go ahead and jump into this jewelry venture. For those of you who haven't ever looked at the Sister Wives jewelry site, I believe it's still up and running and you should check it out. It was a miserable failure. And one of the reasons why was because they priced these pieces. They made jewelry pieces that basically had symbols of sister wives on them. Celtic symbols that they said symbolize their family all being together as sister wives. They would sell them as necklaces, and they would sell them for a very high price, like $250 per necklace, and nobody bought them. They are not, their fans, the people that are watching that show, are not people who buy necklaces, silver necklaces from a website for $250 a pop. So it really went downhill quickly, but Robin was really into it, and I think Kody continued to support her having this business. And that's when the other wives started to turn outwards into multi-level marketing schemes. And as we all know, the person who quickly became the most successful at that was Mary Brown. Mary entered LuLaRoe leggings company, and she sells for them. And I have to be really honest with you, she's quite successful. She's made a lot of money. And the number one reason why she's been able to do that is because of her fan base due to her show, Sister Wives. They continue to get money from that show, and Mary makes money from selling her leggings. A lot of her fans and the people who buy from her come from Sister Wives or from the Mormon community in general.
Successes and failures. through and through, enough to sort of get an education on that. So we're still all sort of in that effort place where we're doing multiple things to make ends meet.
And then everybody kind of was wondering how, now that you've moved to Flagstaff, number one, the reason Flagstaff, although the property looks beautiful, the reason that you chose Flagstaff, and had you consider just waiting until the property was totally built before moving there?
We had 3 sophomores. We were moving them between their junior and senior year. We were moving them between their sophomore and junior year. That would give them 2 years at a new high school, new friends, new experiences, that to sort of feel like their new high school was home. If we were to wait until they graduated, we would have a single graduate every single year following that for a few years, for 3, 4 years, 5 years. We were never going to be able to leave Las Vegas, and I wanted to leave, and the wives, we had discussed this, even though they were resistant to it. We had discussed getting out of Las Vegas before, an economic downturn would turn the values of our properties upside down. And I had...
Okay, so through the research I've done about how polygamist families afford the homes that they live in, one of the big key secrets to having a polygamist family in a big home is this book that was written for polygamist culture. It was written within the community. It's something that allegedly gets passed around. It's not like published anywhere that I'm aware of. I couldn't get it online, but it basically talks about how to flip property. And essentially what it says is that you need to work on getting the biggest loans you possibly can. And you use your wives who do not have, they're not legally married to you. You use your wives to get out additional loans so that you are able to get the biggest property or the best property available. You buy that property and you live in it with the idea that this is never going to be your forever home, because the honest to God truth is that you cannot afford it. So you buy these homes, you get these massive loans that you're not going to be able to afford. You get a loan so big that you have money left over after you build the house or after you buy the home, and you use some of that money to pay the mortgage for the next year or two with the idea that you're only going to stay there for a year or two. This is not a forever home for your family. You work in those 2 years, you pray, you hope that you're going to build equity in that home so that you can resell it, make money on the home 2 or 3 years later, and then take that money and do it all over again, with the idea that maybe towards your old age, you'll be able to buy something that you and your wives can live in or live on, like a piece of property that you can live in or on together, but you won't have to house all of these children. So the children never get like a forever home. It's never meant to be. I really believe this. I believe that the Las Vegas homes were so big and so nice. And of course, they didn't give Mary a smaller home. And I have a lot of things to say about that too. But I think in their heads, they're like, we need to sell these 4 homes on this cul-de-sac in a couple of years. When we can make money on it, we need to sell these homes and then we need to get out of here. So we're not going to build like a significantly smaller home in a neighborhood full of, homes that are a certain size. So I believe that Kody and the wives, they always knew that they were going to have to leave those homes. I don't know if they thought that they would move to Arizona next, but they were aware that a part of what they were doing was just building equity in those large, beautiful homes and then moving out. It's so sad to me that years later, they still don't really have any kind of real property where they could have been together, which I think just cements the idea that Kody never really wanted to be with them. He just wanted to be with Robin. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop it here. I thought that this podcast was interesting. It's from a couple of years ago, but it's interesting to listen to. And I have another one that I'm going to share with you in my next video where Kody's nephew, Benjamin Brown, speaks out about the family. And I just find it all so incredibly interesting to know more about the backstory and what these people have to say when they're away from the show. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again next time. Take some time to head down your own rabbit hole.